The once bustling streets of the Gaza Strip have been transformed into an eerie landscape of dusty craters, twisted wires, and crumpled buildings. After a year of Israeli bombardment following Hamas's October 7th attacks, the densely populated enclave, with a pre-war population of 2.3 million, has been pulverized. Here, in the southern city of Khan Yunis, more than 19,000 buildings have been damaged, data from the UN satellite center UNOSAT shows. It is the second worst affected area. The first is northern Gaza. Jihad Shamli, who lost a child in March, has been displaced 4 times since Israel's offensive began.
In any city in Gaza, you find rubble in the streets. Every street we enter, we find rubble. Gaza is not a war. Gaza had an earthquake worse than war. We've been through a grinder. Gaza has been through a grinder this year. The destruction we saw, we've never seen in all of history. The other thing, we get the rubble not to build houses, no, but for tombstones and graves, from one misery to another.
Hamas attacked Israeli communities on October 7th, killing around 1,200 people and taking around 250 hostages, according to Israeli tallies. Israel says Hamas hides fighters among the general population in Gaza. The militant group denies this. Israel says it will strike Hamas wherever they emerge, while trying to reduce harm to civilians. Palestinian health authorities say more than 41,700 people have been killed since the start of Israel's military campaign. UNOSAT shows 2/3 of Gaza's pre-war structures have been damaged as Israel tries to eliminate Hamas. That's a total of 163,778 structures. Each block in this visualization represents a destroyed or damaged building. If placed all together, it would look something like this. More than 3 times as many buildings as those in the New York City borough of Manhattan. And the UN estimates that more than 42 million tons of debris are piled up in the Strip. That's over 14 times the rubble accumulated in all the conflicts in Gaza since 2008, and enough to fill the Great Pyramid of Giza 11 times.
As you can imagine, the challenges are huge.
Alessandro Mrakic is from the United Nations Development Program, part of a group working with local authorities on a pilot project to clear debris.
So this will require proper planning, very detailed planning, considering not only the volume, but all the risks. It's going to be a massive operation, but at the same time, it's important that we start now because debris removal is a life-saving activity at this point.
The UN estimates that it would take 14 years and at least $1.2 billion to safely dispose of the rubble, if the war stopped now. But the scale of destruction is only one of the challenges. Conflict debris differs from normal controlled construction and demolition waste as it contains unrecovered bodies, in this case as many as 10,000, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, and unexploded bombs. And the dust produced can be contaminated with heavy metals from munitions and household or industrial chemicals. All pose huge health and safety risks.
I can give you 100% assurance that people are being exposed to massive amounts of pollutants, metal contamination in water, in air, in food.
Mojgan Savabieh-Sfahani is an environmental toxicologist who has worked extensively in Iraq.
Those kinds of exposures will end up causing all kinds of DNA damage in mother's reproductive cells, in father's reproductive cells, and that would culminate in a horrific rise in birth defect in children in Gaza.
The contents of busted sewage pipes underneath the debris can contaminate water supplies and provide an environment for disease-transmitting insects or a home for snakes and scorpions. The rubble is also a good environment for sandflies, which can spread skin infections. The United Nations Environment Program, or UNEP, estimates that 2.3 million tons of the debris generated in this conflict could be contaminated with asbestos. It is mainly found in the older buildings and structures of Gaza's 8 crowded refugee camps, some of which have been hit. With prolonged exposure, the asbestos fibers are inhaled and over time can cause diseases, including lung, larynx, and ovarian cancers, and fibrosis of the lungs, according to the World Health Organization. Experts say asbestos-related diseases usually take 10 to 50 years to emerge. The path ahead is also littered with practical difficulties. UN experts say Gaza lacks the 1,300 acres of land needed to store all the rubble, and landfills are now in an Israeli military zone. Israel's military unit Kogat says they were in a restricted area, but access would be granted. Government officials report fuel and machinery shortages as Israeli restrictions slow clear-up efforts. Israel did not specifically comment on these allegations. The UNEP says it will need owners' permission to remove rubble, but the scale of the destruction has blurred property boundaries, and some property records have been lost in the war. Asked about the debris, Kogat said it aims to improve waste handling and will work with the United Nations to expand efforts. Several donors have expressed interest in rebuilding Gaza. But a UN official who asked to remain anonymous told Reuters that, quote, everyone is concerned whether to invest if there is no political solution in place.